So often I am asked, why is it that those who feel deeply, those who seem to glow with a soft inner light of compassion and understanding, are the ones most devoured by the icy claws of those who cannot feel at all? Why do empaths, the intuitively sensitive ones, so often find themselves tethered to the shadowy mirrors of narcissism? This is not coincidence. Dear soul, it is psychic inevitability. It is the unconscious crying out to be seen, not in others, but in the dark, forgotten corners of the self. To begin to understand this invisible wound, we must abandon the idea that the world outside us is separate from what stirs within. The narcissist does not simply walk into your life. He is summoned not by conscious choice, no, but by the gravitational pull of the wound you do not yet recognize. Like a ghost calling for resolution, the unacknowledged pain you carry emits a frequency, and those whose shadows are the perfect counterweight to your ache will hear it. This is not a punishment, but a law, the law of psychic balance. I want you to imagine for a moment that your heart, tender and open, is a vessel filled not only with your love, but also your longing, a longing to be seen without having to explain yourself, a yearning to be nurtured, not just for your light, but despite your darkness. This longing, when unmet in childhood, when left to ferment in silence, becomes an ache that vibrates in the unconscious, and it is this ache, invisible to you, but deafening to the psyche, that calls forth the archetype of the devourer. You see, the empath is not born only of light. The empath is forged in emotional war zones, the kind where love had to be earned, where attention was conditional, where safety came not from being held, but from holding others. Empaths often emerge from environments where they were attuned to the emotional weather of their caregivers, scanning for subtle shifts, absorbing atmospheres like sponges, and interpreting unspoken needs as if their lives depended on it. And often, indeed, this hypervigilance, what modern therapists may call codependency, is in truth a trauma gift. But all gifts of trauma come with a curse, the loss of the self. The empath, in becoming attuned to the other, loses the contours of their own needs, desire, and boundaries. And into this void of self-definition walks the narcissist, radiant, confident, magnetic, and full of a solidity that the empath unconsciously craves. But make no mistake, the narcissist too is an orphan of the soul. Their bravado is a fortress, not a temple. Their need to be adored is born of the same primal wound, only dressed in different armor. So here we are, two wounded children dressed in adult flesh, one begging to be chosen through self-sacrifice, the other demanding to be seen through domination. This is not love. It is trauma, reenactment. It is a karmic play where both actors seek to resolve their childhood wounds by forcing others to play the missing roles, only to find that no one, not even the most intuitive empath or the most convincing narcissist, can become the parent you never had. But what makes this dance so intoxicating is its mythic nature. The empath is often possessed by the archetype of the healer, the unconscious belief that if they can just love enough, understand enough, forgive enough, they can redeem the other. And in doing so, finally redeem themselves. This is not healing, this is martyrdom in disguise. The Narcissist, on the other hand, is possessed by the archetype of the false king, a shadow sovereign who craves worship but cannot tolerate intimacy. For true intimacy would strip them of their illusion, expose the cracked child behind the throne, and force them to confront the very emptiness they've built their personality to protect. And so the dance begins. One gives endlessly, the other takes insatiably. One becomes hollow from over-empathizing, the other becomes inflated through idealization. One fears abandonment and therefore over-functions. The other fears engulfment and therefore withholds. They do not realize they are not loving each other. They are recreating their earliest heartbreaks in hopes of a different ending. But the unconscious does not seek happiness, it seeks wholeness. And wholeness only comes through integration, not projection. When the empath finally tires of bleeding for others who cannot even acknowledge their pain, they begin to turn inward. This is the moment of psychic awakening, the moment the dream changes, the moment the mirror cracks. I have seen this in countless dreams of my patients, the woman running endlessly through a burning forest, clutching a crying child, not her own, or the man whose reflection in the mirror morphs into a beast with his father's voice. These are not dreams, these are maps. The psyche is always trying to free you from the archetype that binds you, but it speaks in symbol, not language. The empath must confront the wound of unworthiness, the secret belief that their value comes only from being needed, that if they stop rescuing others, they will disappear, that to rest, to receive, to say no is to risk abandonment. And where does this come from? From the original betrayal, not by lovers or friends, but by those who were meant to love them unconditionally and did not know how. This betrayal creates an internal orphan, a part of the psyche frozen in time, stuck waiting for the apology that will never come, the affection that was never given. And this orphan, dear one, becomes a magnet for narcissists, for they too are orphans, but ones who chose to become the abuser rather than feel the victim. Two sides of the same archetype, both terrified of their own vulnerability, both addicted to control one through caretaking, the other through manipulation. But here lies the great secret. The way out is not to change the other, but to reclaim the abandoned parts of the self, to become the inner parent your orphaned heart has been waiting for, to set boundaries not as punishment, but as protection for your sacred space, to realize that your empathy is a gift, but it must be wielded with discernment, for without boundaries, empathy becomes self-erasure. You must no longer seek the wounded to fix. You must become the healer who heals themselves. And as you do, the spell breaks. The narcissist can no longer find purchase in your psyche. Their words no longer pierce. Their absence no longer wounds. For you have retrieved your soul from their grasp. You no longer need to be needed. You simply need to be. Let me pause here. Not to end, but to allow the psyche to breathe. We have only just begun. The next part will dive deeper into dreams, the anima and animus wounded bonds, and the way shadow work transforms this invisible wound from curse to catalyst. And now we descend deeper, not into despair, but into the heart of the labyrinth, where the soul of the empath stands barefoot before a mirror that does not flatter. This is where the real work begins, the shadow work, the sacred excavation of the hidden chambers of the unconscious. You see, the wound that draws the narcissist is not only emotional, it is archetypal. The empath is often ruled unconsciously by the archetype of the wounded inner child and its twin, the redeemer complex. These archetypes whisper, you are only valuable if you heal others. If they are broken and you can fix them, you will be worthy of love. It is a seductive lie, coated in virtue, masked as goodness, but it is still a lie. In truth, the wound is older than your memories. It is ancestral, inherited, etched into your soul through generations of those who were silenced, neglected, or made invisible. If you look carefully, you may begin to dream not only your own pain, but that of your mother, her mother, and those who came before. That's why healing, it feels so overwhelming, because you are not healing only yourself. You are transmuting a lineage, and yet the narcissist arrives again and again not to punish you, but to awaken you, each one more cunning than the last, each one wearing the face of a different lesson, until one day you realize that their voice cold, dismissive, cruel sounds eerily like the inner critic that has lived inside you for years. You are not only in relationship with the narcissist, you are in relationship with the narcissist within. Now we touch the nerve. The inner narcissist is not evil, it is a protector, a psychic defense mechanism built in early life to avoid annihilation. It is the part of you that learned to perform, to please, to become perfect in order to survive. And because it is built on illusion, it also projects illusion outward. It attracts mirrors instead of people, masks instead of faces. This is a secret. Nobody tells. The empath part of you is addicted to the fantasy of being chosen. The fantasy of being seen by someone who has no capacity to see. That is a trauma loop. An endless audition for love in a theater where the director has already left, and the dreams will reveal this. The woman who keeps dreaming of a child locked in a tower, waiting for a prince who never comes. The man who dreams of swimming toward a distant shore, only to be pulled back by hands made of fog. These are not fairy tales. They are soul codes. The child is your lost innocence. The prince is the hope that someone will rescue you. The fog is your forgotten grief. But you do not need rescue. You need reclamation, the reclamation of your instinct. The empath's instinct has been hijacked. You confuse intensity for intimacy. You mistake inconsistency for passion. You romanticize the emotional roller coaster because chaos feels like home. It is not love. It is repetition. You must become suspicious of your own cravings. The attraction you feel toward the narcissist is not chemistry. It is recognition. Your trauma recognizes their wound, and in that recognition, you feel alive. But aliveness born of trauma is not peace. It is adrenaline. It is survival. The work, then, is not to learn how to stop loving narcissists. The work is to understand why love has meant suffering, why you equate silence with abandonment, why you tolerate manipulation as if it were conversation, why you fear being alone more than being disrespected. This is the shadow work, the turning inward with ruthless compassion the choice to sit with the ache instead of anesthetizing it through another toxic connection. It is, in a sense, a death, the death of your old identity, the one built on being the nice one, the strong one, the forgiving one. But what if you were not forgiving? What if you were afraid? What if your patience was really self-abandonment? What if your unconditional love was a disguised plea? Please, love me back. I'll do anything. You see, the narcissist is not simply an enemy. He is the gatekeeper, and the gate he guards is the gateway to yourself. Once you stop asking him for permission to exist, the gate swings open, and you remember who you were before the world taught you to disappear. You remember your wideness, the part of you that is not afraid to take up space. You remember your rage, not as vengeance, but as sacred fire. You remember your desire not as a tool to be used, but as a compass that guides, and as you remember, something ancient awakens. The anima, if you are masculine, the animus, if you are feminine, the inner partner that was never external, the inner beloved, when this integration happens, when the feminine within the man or the masculine within the woman is no longer exiled, the attraction to wounded external partners begins to dissolve. No more chasing, no more proving, no more fixing. Instead, there is a stillness, a peace that comes not from being understood, but from no longer needing to be. And in that stillness, something miraculous occurs. The frequency of your soul changes. What you once tolerated becomes intolerable. What once captivated you now repels. You no longer confuse possession with passion. You no longer play therapist to the emotionally unavailable. You no longer seek to become the mother to your partner, the savior to their wounds. You simply become yourself, and those who feed on empathy without reciprocity vanish like shadows in the sun. You are not broken because you love them. You are awakening because you finally love you. And so the unconscious begins to murmur. At first, it is a whisper. You ignore the strange timing of a song that reminds you of them. A dream where you are chasing someone through a labyrinth only to find they were never there. These are not coincidences. These are archetypal signals from the deep synchronicities that crack open the shell of your waking identity and invite you to listen. You see, when your ego becomes too aligned with your wound, when your identity fuses with being the helper, the selfless one, the giver, the unconscious revolts. It sends dreams like fire. It disturbs your peace, not to punish you, but to call you back to yourself. And it begins with the symbolic. The narcissist in dreams often appears not as himself, but as a wolf dressed in silk, as a castle with no doors, as a room full of mirrors in which you cannot find your reflection. These images are not random, they are psychic poetry. The wolf is charm, masking danger. The doorless castle is the illusion of safety that traps you. The mirrored room is the narcissist's world, where your identity is only a reflection of their gaze. And when they stop looking, you vanish. You may also dream of drowning, of trying to scream, but no sound comes. These are the dreams of the empath. whose voice was stifled long before the narcissist ever arrived. They are the cries of your inner child, still locked in a room of silence, still waiting for someone to ask, "What do you need?" But no one comes, and that is the sacred moment, because in that moment you turn inward, not with despair, but with divine clarity, and you become the one who knocks. This is the turning point in the hero's journey, when the savior stops trying to save others and begins rescuing the self. This is when you reclaim projection, pull back your longing, and begin to ask, what part of me created this pattern? What part of me invited the vampire into my home? And you find her, the orphan, not evil, not broken, but terrified. She is the one who believed love must be earned. She is the one who learned to smile through pain. She is the one who clung to every breadcrumb of affection, because it was safer than hunger. And she has been driving your relationships all along. To integrate her is not to shame her, but to thank her, to say, I see why you needed to be liked. I see why you tolerated what you did. But now I will lead. This, my dear listener, is where the narcissist loses all power, because once you are no longer willing to abandon yourself, no one else can do it either. This is individuation, not perfection, but integration, not transcending the pain, but transmuting it, not becoming immune to heartbreak, but becoming unwilling to confuse it for love. When you begin to embody yourself, the wholeness that includes your light and your shadow, your boundaries and your softness, the universe shifts, and you begin to attract differently. Not because you are raising your vibration in some superficial sense, but because your unconscious has updated its pattern. The old archetypes no longer govern you. You no longer seek the devourer. You seek the mirror who reflects, not consumes. And this person will feel boring at first, safe, predictable, kind, and your nervous system, conditioned to chaos, will resist. You will hear the whisper, there's no spark. But that's not truth, that's trauma. That's the orphan inside you, missing the chase. Sit with her, tell her, I know safety feels unfamiliar, but we are not in the war anymore. And watch how love begins to bloom, not in fireworks, but in warmth. The final trap for the empath is shame. The shame of having stayed, of having tried so hard, of having given so much. But I tell you, there is no shame in loving. There is no shame in being loyal to a fault. What matters now is not how long you stayed, but that you are walking away, not just from them, but from the pattern, from the belief that you must bleed to be seen, from the wound that told you your worth is measured by how much you endure. That wound. The invisible one has been guiding you like a ghost, but now you have turned to face it. And in doing so, you have called it by its true name, abandonment. Not just by lovers, but by yourself, by your own silence, by your own tolerance of what hurt you. And the moment you choose to stay with yourself, even in discomfort, even in grief, you end the cycle. You do not need closure from them. You need reunion with you. And in that reunion, the most powerful archetype awakens the sovereign, the one who is no longer ruled by the need to be chosen, the one who does not chase because they have become the source, the one who does not perform because their authenticity is no longer negotiable, and perhaps one day you will meet another sovereign, not a narcissist, not an addict, not a wounded child pretending to be a man, but a whole soul, one who meets your empathy with presence, your depth with clarity, your love with reciprocity. And it will not be a rescue, it will be recognition. Two souls who have faced their shadows and chosen to walk in the light anyway. But before that day, there is this one, the day you choose you, and now we arrive at the sacred threshold, not of another door waiting to be opened by someone else, but of the final door, within the one you must open with your own trembling hand. Alone, with no applause, no witness, only your soul watching. What happens when the empath no longer sees their worth through the eyes of the other? What becomes of the one who has spent lifetimes being a mirror when they finally turn to face their own reflection? They begin to see not a wound, but a womb, a place of creation, not shame. The pain that once magnetized narcissists is no longer a curse, it becomes a chalice, deep enough to hold, not someone else's projections, but the fullness of the self. This is the alchemical shift. What you once feared, your sensitivity, your needs, your anger, your wildness, all of it now becomes gold, but not without fire. To birth the sovereign self, you must walk through flames. You must mourn the fantasy, yes, the fantasy not of who they were, but of who you believed they could become. It is this illusion that keeps the empath chained, this idea that if you just love them a little more, they will soften, that if you understand them deeply enough, they will transform, but they are not yours to transform. And your love is not a spell, it is a seed, and it must be planted in fertile soil. Some soil is not ready. Some hearts are not open. Some souls are not yet willing to plead truth, and that's not your fault. Let me repeat this to your inner child, whose ears are still ringing with the echoes of self-blame. It was never your job to heal them. It was your job to learn through them how to stop betraying yourself. This is the gift hidden inside the venom, the final piece of the dark truth. The narcissist was never your twin flame, never your soulmate, never your other half. They were your sacred opponent, your unconscious in human form, the one sent not to love you, but to wake you. And you are awake now, so what comes next? Now begins the integration. You begin to reclaim every fragment of yourself that you once gave away for love. Every, yes, you said when you meant no. Every apology you whispered just to keep the peace. Every dream you deferred to make room for someone else's chaos. You gather them, you hold them, and you say, I forgive you. Not for failing, but for surviving. This is what I call inner sovereignty. When your empathy becomes rooted in discernment, you still feel deeply, but you no longer drown. You still love freely, but you no longer rescue. You still notice suffering. But you ask first, is this mine to hold? You begin to attract people who do not pull from you, but pour into you, not perfectly, no. For all are still learning, but honestly, without masks, without mirrors, without thrones. You begin to live from the center of your being, no longer orbiting others, but anchored within. And in this anchoring, the unconscious speaks one final time, not in dream, but in symbol. Perhaps you dream of water again, but this time you are floating, Perhaps you see a tower again, but this time you hold the key. Perhaps you stand before a mirror, and this time your reflection meets your eyes and smiles. This is no longer the dream of the wounded. It is the dream of the integrated. You are not just empath. You are not just healer. You are not just the one who feels. You are the mystic, the one who has died 1,000 psychic deaths and lived, the one who has faced the archetype of the devourer and said, "You have no claim here anymore." The one who now walks the earth with eyes wide open and heart intact, not guarded, not naive, but awake, and you will still meet those who echo your old wounds. But now, you will not merge, you will observe. Now, you will not try to heal, you will bless and release. Now, you will not lose yourself because you are finally home. Not in another, not in a label, but in yourself. This is the end of the spiral and the beginning of the spiral, because healing is not linear. It is a sacred dance between forgetting and remembering. But every time you remember, truly remember who you are, you shift the entire lineage forward. You become the ancestor who broke the chain. You become the story that ends with wholeness. You become the one your younger self prayed for. And now, as your soul rests, no longer screaming, no longer hiding, you may find something strange happening. You begin to thank the ones who hurt you, not because they deserved it, but because you are no longer defined by it. And in that, there is freedom, not the freedom of escape, but the freedom of return to truth, return to integrity, return to love that begins inside and radiates outwards like light from a star, steady, ancient, and inextinguishable. This is the final alchemy. The wounded empath becomes the sovereign soul, and the invisible wound, it becomes the doorway. Welcome home.